Welcome to Uncomfortable Growth Uncut, where we celebrate those who defy fear, embrace growth, and live without regret. In a world that celebrates perfection, we rarely hear about the challenges, fears, and crossroads that successful leaders grapple with across work and life. Uncomfortable Growth Uncut shines a light on their personal story and the critical human skills we all need today to turn trials into triumph. So welcome to Uncomfortable Growth Uncut. I have with me today the truly amazing Reg Raghavan. He is the CEO of CulturalPulse, but he's also someone who I've gotten to know pretty well over the last decade or so. And he's one of my absolutely favorite people. And so I'm just so delighted to have him on this episode today. So welcome, Reg.
Thanks, Rowena. That's such a beautiful intro. Get that.
So Reg is one of the most fascinating people I know. And I'm not going to steal his thunder because I actually don't know what story he's going to tell. But would you be able to share for us, Reg, your uncomfortable growth story?
Yeah, sure. I'm not even sure what story I'm going to tell myself, so let's go there. Um, yeah, I mean, I think I was thinking about it when you asked to be part of this. It's like, oh, what do you share? And then when I went into it, I was like, the whole thing's been uncomfortable growth. I think my whole life has been uncomfortable growth. Um, by probably by choice and by also, by design, just kind of landed here. And what I mean by that is, you know, I was born in Australia. My parents are from South India, from Kerala, and they migrated, you know, post White Australia policy, came in 1977. So if you
Mm.
take two almost diametrically opposite cultures, my parents who were born in India in 70s India, which is very different to today's India, by the way,
Mm.
and then drop them in a completely different country and then have a kid and then go through school and all that stuff. It's suddenly you're walking in these two different worlds immediately.
Mm.
And reflecting on that over time, I think a lot of conclusions come back to me later. Um,
Mm.
and insights. It's like, that's what happened. Because when you're a kid, you don't think about that.
Yeah, it's just all happening around you, and you're like, oh, yeah, that's a little bit different to what I see with other people, but that just is.
Absolutely. And that's, very different if you like live in Japan or other countries or maybe Australia in the early days where it was
Yeah.
a lot more homogenous in
Yeah.
terms of culture. And now it's so multicultural. It's almost normal as well. But there was a
Uh-huh.
period, I think, post White Australia policy where it wasn't normal. And so if you drop a kid in that environment, I think
Yeah.
just got heaps of uncomfortable growth stories
Yeah.
or
So
just
yeah,
plain
so tell
discomfort.
me, tell me about that. What was that like, or like what were the biggest, strongest memories you have that now you kind of look back on and you're like, oh, okay, that's what was happening, which is what you said just before. You can
Yeah.
kind of look at it as an adult and start to unravel it.
Yeah, I'll give you a really simple example.
Uh-huh.
It's one that only dropped on me, later. But things like my parents were speaking to me in one language, and then I'd go to school and speak English with my mates, and then come home and speak English to them. So I kind of grew up speaking a language that's different to my parents. Very
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing one language and I'm communicating back in another language, and it's not just about the language. It's also your worldviews and how you perceive things as well. So you're
Yeah.
constantly going. I'd go with my mates, and they'll be like living a certain way, or their parents, their experience with their parents would be a particular way, which is like, yeah, they were allowed to go out and play with the skateboard until the sunset, for example.
Yeah.
We were expected to be at home and you know study or just be at home and not be out. Um,
Yes.
little things like that. But the language thing is it was probably a big one. Another one is I remember even being 12, for example, and going to year six camp,
Uh-huh.
and then everybody was like assigning roles, and so they're like, oh, okay, now you set the table. I had no idea how to set the table because no, we used to eat with our hands.
Yeah. So you're there, just like in that scene from Pretty Woman, when she's like, that's the fork I know. You're like, okay, where, how?
Yeah, absolutely. I was
Clues.
Julia Roberts. Uh,
Yeah, moments in that. Wow, because there are so many things that would have been so different, but you were in this role of living in two worlds, and I guess when your friend group and your parents, there's your two most important relationships as a kid,
yeah.
right? So, and also the ones you spend the most time with. So you're constantly shifting, but also I'm guessing translating.
Yeah. You're in between these two spaces, and they didn't grow up here, so they had no idea what the school
Yeah.
system was like and all of that stuff. Plus, they were quite busy and probably a little bit in survival mode. New migrants
Yeah.
at that time in survival mode a little bit. So, they would have brought a lot of fear. And much later, I thought, kind of looking at the research and all of that, it's like there is this kind of trauma is a strong word, but to migration when you move to
Yes.
a place, and that has an impact. But then, later I realized as well, our family's always been moving. Like my grandfather's been moving, moved places, and then my dad moved, and then when I looked at my journey, I moved to the US later as well. So.
Mm,
Um, I started to see these ancestral patterns playing out as well. So it was kind of beyond just the day to
the
day kind
immediate.
of learning. Yeah, and so I kind of started to go deep into all of that. Um,
Yeah. So how did that impact you at the time? Like, as a kid, how did how did you feel about that? Or and also, I mean, because this was when the white Australian policy had just shifted,
yeah,
right? Like, were there a lot of other migrants around you, or were you it? You were the
there were.
representation.
There were. I mean, we had our. So I was quite lucky because I had my family friends group, so my parents' friends, so
Yeah.
they were all of Indian background, for example. I had my school friends are all Aussie. Sometimes a bit of a mix, but where I grew up was largely Anglo-Celtic white Australians.
Yeah.
Um, I played cricket as well, so sport. So they were all my Aussie mates, and that was a fun, amazing environment. Always looked forward to
Yeah. And it's
that.
a common passion between India and Australia, isn't it?
And 100%, except India were crap then, and now it's a bit more evened out. But yeah, no, I was lucky, and then I had yeah, different friend circles, so I got to bounce between those a little bit. So for me, I probably the integration bit was a lot easier, and that's why I'm passionate about sport and community and volunteering as well. And there's a beautiful part of Aussie culture which is has these things that bring part of community, especially now when everything's kind of individualizing more and more. Don't know
Mm.
your neighbors, but back then you actually you knew all your neighbors. You'd play with them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember, because I was born in 72, so I grew up in the 70s and early 80s. But I remember leave the house in the morning on the weekend, you'd leave the house at maybe 9 a.m., dying to get out. And then you'd sometimes remember to come back for lunch, but not always. But someone else would feed you in the neighborhood because you'd be out with the friends in the neighborhood and you'd be running around and someone would always feed you, and then you'd go home and your parents would say, oh, where have you been all day? I mean, that just would not happen today.
Yeah.
There's no way I would let my kids just like leave the house as a kid and come back maybe at lunch, maybe later, and not know where they are.
Why do you think that is? Is that a trust thing, or is it a community? Like, because
Uh, I I think part of it is you don't know your neighbors the same degree. Whereas where I grew up, I mean, they were some of my parents' best friends. So they were, we'd all call them aunts and uncles. And everyone knew everyone's kids as well, which is why they were happy to feed. It was community feeding.
Yeah.
Whose kid have I got? Okay, community feeding. Um, but I also think the feeling of danger was a lot lower. There weren't as many cars on the road. Um, I don't know, you didn't seem to hear about all of these terrifying stories about
Yeah.
kids being kidnapped or something horrible happening. You didn't have
Unless you
mobile
watch,
phones. You
unless you
didn't-
watch Australia's Most Wanted.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you didn't even have a phone
Yeah.
to be able to say where you were or to track. Whereas now we've got the extreme opposite. And even with all of that, it doesn't have that sense of safety
Mm.
that I remember feeling and my parents felt when I was growing up. I
Mm.
mean, we all had bikes. Like we'd be going miles on these bikes and
Yeah. Yeah.
and no one would really know exactly where we were, but no one felt scared or concerned about it.
Yeah.
And so I do think the definition of community has changed.
Mm.
And also, if I saw a kid wandering around on their own, or even if they had another kid and we're in the middle of, like, say, I don't know, a park or something, and they were under 10, I'd probably stop and ask them where their parents are.
Mm.
Whereas back in the day, we were just out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very different, I think, very different what we're comfortable with and our like our sense of safety
Mm.
and safety for our kids.
Yeah. Interesting. Just while you were talking and you said uncles and aunties, I remember that was a confusion point for me because I remember there was a guy who lived up the road. There
Mm.
was a guy and my dad, he's like, because and obviously you're friends with all the neighbors, and
Hmm.
him introducing me, and he's like, "Oh, here's your uncle," and I was like, confused. I'm like, how can he be my uncle? Uncle, I was trying to work it out.
Yeah.
Later I got it. I was like, it's like
Yeah.
the first time one of my Indian uncles dressed up as Santa Claus at one of the events, and I was like, I didn't know there was Indian Santa Clauses. It was all
Oh, that's so
uncomfortable growth,
funny.
Rowena.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. And you're like, okay, because my worlds are colliding.
That's not what I see on TV.
Yeah. I know you're my uncle. You look as if I've never seen Santa, characterized as Indian before. But hey, if there's still presents, I'm going with it.
Pretty much that's how it went down.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you think that shaped you, as a child or living in those two worlds which were quite different?
Yeah.
How do you think that shaped you, particularly as you started to become an adult?
I think you. Oh, sorry. Do you mind if I plug in?
No, go for it.
Right, yeah. I just recall that my.
So yeah, well, how has that shaped you, Reg? Now that you're an adult and as you became an adult, how did that dichotomy of background shape you?
Yeah, I think it. Oh, I mean, obviously, absolutely shapes you, and
Mm.
it's whether you're conscious of it or not. And I
Mm.
think people generally in that situation have two choices. Like, do I want to be conscious of this, or do I not? And
Mm.
you can take both paths in a way. I probably, I mean, one thing I've always kind of been a little bit like be in the moment, experience things as they are. So probably as I was growing up, probably until I was 15, I probably didn't think about it too much. Did it
Mm.
shape me? If looking back, I'd say yes, it did.
Mm.
How? I think you just always aware of difference,
Mm.
because not only from your perspective, but also you're acutely aware of how others see you. And
Mm.
it was basically, and when you're kids
Mm.
are not, but we live in a very physical world. So it's
Mm-hmm.
the first thing they see is you see physical attributes,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the thing that people associate with you, so that they would see me as the black kid or the Indian kid or
Mm-hmm.
whatever they
Mm-hmm.
that and that is kind of part of your identity,
Mm.
because physically that's what it looks like, until you get to know people, and then once you're mates and whatever, then you don't see that, it kind of
Yeah.
disappears.
Yeah.
um and then you're just kind of who you are. But I think, also I think those things do or can have an imprint on the way you see yourself.
Yes.
um so even though, say for example, let's say I got teased a lot, and it did happen at school a lot, so you get a lot of
Yeah.
remarks or comments, particularly back then. Um and they forget it. They're probably, now they're probably older,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
probably
Oblivious to
remember it.
what they said.
Yeah, but you might hold on to that, and I did, certain things you hold on to, and then it shapes the way you see yourself.
Mm.
Um, and then I think as I became more conscious of it, it was about, and going through my, more personal spiritual journey, it's about unraveling those um assumptions or thoughts about yourself.
Mm.
Um, and then kind of you go through a journey of discovering, who you actually are.
Mm.
And I think that's a universal thing. I mean, in my case, it was about that difference. But
Yeah. That
uh,
was a part of it because it was such a big, visible part.
yeah, and there were other kids, they were large at school, and then that was everybody just teased them based on that.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't. It
Yeah.
was
Kids
just,
are just mean. Let's face it. Kids are just mean. Anything to tease on, they will.
yeah, exactly. So I think, yeah, I mean, I think I would say I you can allow it to shape you as much as you want it to,
Mm.
or you can, in the Chinese kind of qigong way, you can use that energy and shift it into
Mm.
another way.
Mm.
But yeah,
Mm. So tell me about yeah, that journey you've been on around, I guess, identity,
Mm.
because you've got so many different variables, say, to what I had growing up. Um, some similar because we're not dissimilar in age, but I think I'm older. But, like you also had some really different variables coming from, your parents being from India, plus the migration story,
Yeah,
plus the pieces that are uniquely you.
yeah.
So how did you work through that? I'm just fascinated by that piece.
Um, I think it was probably, yeah, I probably wasn't too aware of it. So if I just go in terms,
Mm,
there's probably like three strands to this whole thing, which is there's this culture and community and identity piece for myself.
mm,
There's probably like this entrepreneurship journey,
mm-hmm,
where that sits in terms of uncomfortable growth, and then
mm,
probably the this spiritual slash underlying belief system,
mm,
like, yeah, probably journey as well, which has also been in all running threads in parallel, but they probably all connected at one point,
mm,
a little bit later, when so I had gone off to so I finished uni,
mm-hmm,
um, went to got the opportunity to go to Silicon Valley,
mm.
and that was one kind of major decision was, because at that time nobody knew what Silicon Valley was. It was kind of,
What year roughly was this?
let's
Early,
just
early Silicon Valley.
let's just say I had to look up MapQuest to see where it was. on Alta
Oh, that's funny.
on an Alta Vista browser.
Oh, that's great. Well, better than the World Book encyclopedias.
Yeah, yeah, I don't think it made it. Um, yeah, so it was dusty. I mean, it's 40 minutes south of San Francisco,
Mm,
South Bay. What is this place? You look up, Silicon Valley wasn't even on the map. It didn't say Silicon Valley. It just said,
mm,
Mountain View, Palo Alto.
mm,
What are these places? Um, but got an opportunity to go there and work there for a year, which was
mm.
later an amazing opportunity. Once I got there, I realized I'm like, wow, this is like the spot where everybody from around the world are coming to congregate, entrepreneurs,
Mm, mm.
tech professionals. And I remember we had our apartment paid for. It was in Mountain View, and it was really expensive at the time. Like the Aussie dollar was about 47 cents or something. Um,
Uh,
and we'd go. There was a spa down in our apartment, and we'd go down to the spa all the time and just hang out. And everybody
mm,
would talk about their next big idea. And I was young at the time. I was 20. And just hearing those stories were amazing. And there was one
yeah.
story this guy told me, and I was like, "What are you, what is that product that you're building?" And he's like, "Oh, I didn't really understand." He was talking about some video compression thing, and then he goes, "Just remember, FaceTime, FaceTime." Like, okay, all right. And then, hold on, years later, he must have sold it on a few times.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Yeah, so going there, so I went to Silicon Valley. I came back, and then started working in the tech sector for a bit. And then one thing I was passionate about was volunteering. Um, went to Vanuatu, did some volunteering out there, came back. Another friend of mine said, "Hey, there's an opportunity in the Northern Territory to kind of do a video or tell the story
Mm.
of people out there." And very similarly, I had no idea what was out there.
Mhm.
It's like I looked up the map again, and I'm like, "There's this weird place." It's like
MapQuest Part 2.
this is now this was a lot later. Um, yeah, and I was like, "Oh, what's out there on the border of WA and NT?" I mean, I have no idea. So, hired a four-wheel drive, got out there,
Mm.
turned up at these indigenous communities, and there's the first experience was getting out, and there was like rap music blasting, and I thought, is this a ghetto? What is it? Like, is it people walking around with African American clothing, and it's like, wow,
Uh-huh.
what is this? And then met some of the community members, and they're so beautiful and warm,
Yeah.
and welcoming, and immediately kind of felt at home. And when some of the old ladies were talking as well, I just actually felt like it was my grandparents speaking, the way the language sounded. And
Yes.
um, yeah, so that experience basically, um, it was a story of a community in Kintor where they've got really high rates of kidney disease, and
Yeah.
traveling 500 k's west of Alice Springs. Sorry, they live 500 k's west of Alice Springs, and yet when they get diagnosed with kidney disease, end-stage renal disease, they have to go on dialysis in the hospital,
Yeah.
which is in
Right.
Alice Springs. So they have to travel
Yeah.
be 4 or 5 days on dialysis out there, and then essentially they were, running away, committing suicide from hospitals. And so I didn't really understand that. So I asked one of the elders there and one of the community members around why that's happening, and
Yeah.
they said, "Oh, this is your definition of health, the Western definition of health is different to ours. Ours is
Ah.
what they said, Nura Walcha Chukurpa, which is land, family, and dreaming." And I was like, wow, okay. And so they were like, oh, if we're not on country, then we feel sick. Um,
Mm.
and so that was that story. And they ended up, there's a piece of artwork here from there.
Mm.
But that story, they sold a piece of artwork. It was $1 million. Bought a dialysis machine on country, and they're doing amazing stuff now. They're known as the Purple House.
Mm.
Uh, I think I also was involved in just connecting them with Rotary, and they ended up building a $1 million health clinic out there.
Mm.
So, but that story just made me think, oh wow, different. cultures have different ideas of worldviews,
Yes.
and that was even more diametrically opposite to the Indian culture. So then suddenly now I had this triangulation. But
Let's throw another one in.
yeah, which made the difference because I'm like, oh, okay, this is
Yeah.
what it looks like. So
Because that's also super fascinating when you think about so many things in our, I guess, our primary view, or the one we've grown up with or had been exposed to the most.
yeah,
A lot of those assumptions are subconscious. And, you mentioned one before around what kids should do after school, and I think very much how I was brought up and how I think with my kids is around, well, you want to, do well at school, but you want to be a kid first and foremost. So it's really important to have fun and enjoy your childhood and ride bikes and just have fun because, life can get serious as you get older and it's a wonderful part of being a kid. But then there are such different worldviews when it comes to that,
I
right?
was gonna say ours was opposite. It was like study first and be a kid
Yes.
later.
Yeah, yeah. And even because both the girls go to a school which is very multicultural, and that was intentional, in fact. They go to PLC at Croydon, and it's probably 20% white maximum, you know. But it's so interesting because they'll be sharing with me a lot of their friends all have tutors every Saturday.
Mm.
And my assumption is that's for remedial help. But actually, no, 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 no. They're like well ahead
Yeah.
of the syllabus. That's just to do better and better and better because education is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And like yeah, and that's the world I kind of grew up. I mean, my parents were really flexy. They were in the end, I mean, they had those principles of wanting to do that, but it wasn't as extreme as that.
Yeah, as if you've maybe been in India. But
Yeah, and it's I mean there it's kind of a survival thing, right? It's like you
yeah,
could imagine a country of, a billion people back then as well when the economy
yeah,
was not doing as well as it is now. There weren't
yeah,
many opportunities. So you kind of like, and I certainly, later I, look at my dad's life and stuff, grandfather and all that, and it's like, oh, there's a survival mode aspect.
yeah.
Which is like, oh, if I, my dad's the kind of person who, if you're catching a bus, he'll be at the bus stop 2 buses before the bus that he's meant to catch.
So how come you and I run late, Reg?
Probably because of that. I'm gonna blame my dad
Yeah,
because I'm standing at.
traumatized by being too early. I always run just to time, which technically is probably a little late.
I prefer to say we like to enjoy the moment, Rowena. We like to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I guess, yeah, like so when you become conscious that there are very different worldviews,
Yeah,
it it broadens your horizons, but it also, I think, makes you think, well, what's my worldview? Right? Because
yeah,
you're like, oh, it's not by default. My
yeah,
worldview and my choices around these things can be by design, but I've got so many different contrasts.
yeah,
So what is it that I believe? What is it that I choose?
yeah. 100%. And I was a bit lucky, and maybe I was just naturally interested in this because before, when I was living in Canberra, before I went on that trip out to Kintor, I had a mentor, and he was like a career
Mm,
diplomat. Had been a diplomat in Russia, been the consul general there, and sorry, the ambassador, and India, a few different.
mm,
So he was involved in a study by one of the universities in Germany about cultural values,
mm,
thing. And so that really broadened my mind as well because he would
mm,
he would like even just the concept of he would tell me about how a culture's concept of time would
mm,
change how they negotiate, for example,
mm,
and in a business dealing or
mm,
beyond just kind of the business
Surface stuff.
business card etiquette stuff, which yeah.
Yeah, so fascinating.
Hmm.
That's so fascinating. Yeah, it just reminded me when you said even concepts of time. And I've been to Fiji a few times. And you can see everyone who's been there for only a day or two. They're like, where's the surface? And everyone says, oh, Fiji time. And you can see everyone's like, wait, come on, until they've been there a
Yeah.
few days. And it's like, oh, okay, it's Fiji time.
Yeah. Absolutely. And part of this stuff, because I mean, some cultures live multi-dimensionally, and that sounds
Yeah.
bizarre, but it's like I remember one of the indigenous elders, a Warlpiri man. He was one of the medicine men, and kind
Mm,
of adopted me as his father, and would show me stuff that he would do, and he was kind of like, oh, you guys always judge us for our clothes and the way
mm,
our community looks and all this stuff. But he goes, I don't even live in this world. And he would talk about traveling like through dreams, and he was
mhm,
kind of the healer in communities, and subsequently I got to spend a lot of time with indigenous communities in the Amazon, in Kenya, the Maasai,
mhm,
in India, in different parts of the world, and
mm.
very common, a lot of similarities in terms of their worldview and their understanding of a more multidimensional view and time and things
Mm.
happening. So I became a little bit more relaxed on time as a result, because
Mm.
there's sometimes more things happening. There's
Yes.
you're
It's
having,
not just this first dimension.
yeah. And so,
Wow.
so even balancing that together, but they kind of say being present and being in the moment is actually a doorway to through those different dimensions. But
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible. So, with all of these fascinating pieces, you're also now in a business which is all about different cultures. Um, so tell me how you and your experiences has led to you now like creating and leading a business called Cultural Pulse. How does that journey all work together?
yeah, thankfully it picks up from the last story. So, I think after that experience, and triangulating those different, cultural experiences,
Mm,
from being younger to my kind of Indian background and philosophical, understanding the way that they view the world, and then understanding, to a limited degree,
mm,
the indigenous view of the world, as told by them. Um, it was kind of the light bulb moment to say, hey, this is a thing. And I also saw in parallel of on some of those trips there were communications, talking about trying to communicate with those communities about not smoking because of brain cancer and all of that. And I remember one ad in particular, or communications, and it was the most sophisticated English, talking about how smoke can affect neurons in the brain and blah blah blah. And it was kind of a very material, you know, chemical,
mm-hmm. Very
medical,
rational
rational,
medical
yeah,
communication.
description of why you shouldn't smoke. And I
Yeah.
remember thinking, there is no way that, in this community where there's probably a English literacy of, um, you know, at primary school level or whatever, that
Yeah.
they're going to comprehend what that means to then drive
Yes.
behavior change. And I thought I was seeing that in some other areas, some work that we're doing. So I thought at that point I wanted to uh, run a consultancy to bridge that gap between government spending,
Yeah.
and getting a message across, and community understanding, um, for reasons of health equity and equity, but also,
Mm,
there's government spend as well, taxpayer money that's being spent, and if you're not
mm-hmm.
doing that
You want
efficiently.
to make it work.
Yeah. So effectiveness as well. And I think that was part of the corporate side of me playing out, which is like, hey, let's do things more efficiently. How can we do it more
Mm,
efficiently? And so yeah, luckily at the time, I'd met Patrick as well, Patrick Skeen. Check him
hmm
out on LinkedIn. And he was passionate in sport and doing similar, had similar conclusions on the cultural side, and so we
Yeah.
joined forces and to then run a bunch of different projects with sport and government at the time
Yeah.
around bridging that gap.
Yeah. Because it is like how I think about it, and this is just also coming from my own experience, is there is so much richness from having an understanding of the differences, but you also need the piece which enables that relatability. And I love what you were talking about, just with the smoking ad, and this was a very sophisticated medical ad, and it just wasn't designed for the community. So there's no bridge, but there's so much in like enriching knowledge and insight in these different communities if we can create a bridge,
Mm.
and not just in advertising and marketing, but a broader bridge. And I do think that obviously has had huge progress from what I see
Yeah,
in the last you know, decade, ma
massive.
massive, massive. Like even as there's acknowledgement of country and there's respect more for beyond what you see, what clothes people are wearing and, what their houses look like,
Yeah.
because that's using a white lens. And just even the kids, all of my daughter's friends, they're such a mix of cultures, and they're often living in households where their parents are first generation, or maybe they've just migrated, right? So similar to you, where you've got this, it's almost like with migration, there's this forced bridge, but
Mm.
not everyone understands it's there. But I love how the kids are often the ones who create that bridge,
Mm.
because they're like, okay, I've got a foot in this world and I get this world, but I've also got a foot in this world because this is where my friends live, this is where my school is. And how do you then make sense of that whole bridging?
Mm. Was that a question?
Maybe in a bit of a observation and a question. But yeah, what do you
Yeah.
think is yeah, what do you think is needed now for the bridge to make that bridge even deeper?
That's a good question. Yeah. Uh, I definitely agree with you. Like time and, you know, we're getting better. We're not even getting better. It's yeah, it's there's a forced bridge because yeah, that's the second generation experience.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So naturally they're brought up in that environment and there's enough people and enough role models now on TV and all of that. Like you've got Dummy Im, and oh, you would never have seen that in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's there. I think in one segment of Australia, I think there's still new migrants coming in, so they're still
Yeah. Yeah.
experiencing that first, from newer communities, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got that experience, especially the ones with lower English proficiency, where there's a bit of a bit more of a
It's a
gap.
bigger barrier. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then so the way I see it is we've got this rich naturally, and we always have, even since the beginning, since Italian, Greeks, and Eastern Europeans
Mm-hmm.
used to come to Australia, and even before that, there's a rich cultural capital in Australia, which started with the kind of Indigenous heritage.
Mm,
connected to the land. And then there was kind of the British inheritance and, building of the country in the way it is now. And
mm,
then you've got this multicultural, people say multicultural achievements, the third one.
mm,
So I just say we've always had this rich cultural capital.
mm.
How do we use that for the benefit, social and economic benefit of Australia, if we're going to look at it
Yeah.
from a nation perspective? Um, Particularly in light of, all the geopolitics and, our role in Asia and
Yeah.
all of that, but also just for improving quality of life and,
Mm,
health equity. And Patrick's always quoted somebody else, but in terms of saying, your society's always as good as um, the least privileged in that. So
true.
the more
Mm-hmm.
equity there is, and the more we can raise the quality of life around that. But then,
Mm,
but then there's the opportunity. So there's the equity bit, and then there's the opportunity bit. And I think
yeah.
the opportunity bit's really exciting, actually, because I
Yeah.
think when you look at multiculturalism in Europe and other countries, it's very different to Australia, the
Mm,
way it's played out. Yet the narrative, when you look at the discourse, sometimes overseas multiculturalism can actually influence the way that we perceive ourselves
mm,
as a nation. But I think we've got a very unique story and a very different story.
mm,
We're closer to Asia. We've got the indigenous heritage. We've got beautiful land and spirit and country here,
mm,
but still in a Western context. And so
mm.
we really have the best of a lot of worlds here. So it's about how do we not only optimize our own experience, but also share that back with the world as the world becomes more increasingly globalized and
Mhm.
fractured and fragmented. We could be
Mm,
and are a fantastic example of you know the way you could live life and um, it's testament that everyone wants to come and live here. There's
mm,
people are breaking down the borders to come here and get a visa or travel here. And I think that
mhm.
unique mix, it's, with sport and some of
Yeah.
the other things and then the laid back kind of lifestyle, if we can find that niche, be proud of it and project it back out. If
Mm,
the nation was an individual itself, we're
yeah.
almost finding our own identity and sharing that back.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it is different. Um, I've never overtly thought about Europe and their migration, kind of experience. I've never really delved into that, but I know when I travel, how it feels in Australia feels different. And I wouldn't say, like, I don't like judgment of right or wrong, but
Yeah.
it feels it feels good.
Yeah.
Like not to say that everything's perfect and everything's great. There's
Yeah.
still opportunity, equity and opportunity and work to be done, but
Yeah.
it feels good. You know,
Yeah.
it's there are all these positives. There are all these things that enrich and take it to something new. It's the fusion idea, right? So
Yeah.
you take these different worlds and then you bring it together, and those ingredients all together create something entirely new,
Absolutely.
and unique, and shows here is the positives, here are the opportunities,
Yeah.
which is really lovely. I remember when we lived in Singapore briefly, and one of the things I really loved about Singapore, and the girls were in preschool, but they'd celebrate every religious holiday. And, they were in preschool and they'd always have a dress up day and a celebration of that different country, religion. So they had a heap of it. Can you imagine if you put them all together? You were always having religious celebrations and holidays.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but it
More
was
public, more
really
public
nice.
holidays.
Yeah, no public holidays, just dress up. Dress up and food. There was always food. But it was a celebration of that culture.
Yeah.
And I loved it how the girls knew all about it. So they'd come home and they'd tell me about, what they'd learnt and what the food was like and the dress because they were all encouraged to learn and
Yeah.
celebrate. And the people, the kids who were from that culture would also get to share something about what they did at home and
Mm.
what it meant to them and what were the stories behind it. So really simple because they were preschoolers.
Yeah.
But it was beautiful. And I loved that because they suddenly had this view where they were conscious that there were different ways to be. And it wasn't right or wrong. It was just unique and different. And that was something to be celebrated, not something to be looked at as in, well, that's different by default. That mustn't be right because it's not my primary view.
Yeah.
So I really love that about Singapore. Um, and obviously Singapore is very different also to Australia, but I think there are so many opportunities and benefits.
Yeah. And
And
when, yeah.
and the fusion is the next level.
Yeah. And I think we're starting to do that a little bit. You see it with Chinese New Year. It's
Mm-hmm.
become a little bit more, you know, out in the mainstream. And I remember chatting to a professor of anthropology at São Paulo University, and I was in Brazil, and I was asking her about the Japanese migration, which happened. There's 2 million Japanese in Brazil. They left in the 30s or something, and now they're like second and third generation, maybe fourth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she was saying, "Oh yeah, now Brazil has the concept of the Brazilian Japanese mind, where it's not just Japanese Brazilians that are part of those organizations and discussions, like genuine, like Brazilians as well, academics and different people also commenting on maybe they have a connection somehow, they're
Mm-hmm.
married someone, or just interested in the topic. But it's not actually about the background. It's actually about
The new,
yeah,
the
the
what is
mind.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
what it's created.
which I think then it becomes, amazing because and it happens here, you've got the Chinese Australian
Yeah.
mind here is constructed of Aussies and Aussies who've lived in China,
Mm-hmm.
Chinese people that have been here for a long time, since the gold rush, Chinese people have migrated recently, and other cultures that are interested in China.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's starting to happen, and that's where you really get the amazing ideas and thought and cross-pollination of uh,
Yeah. That
opportunity.
creation, yeah, that creation of new,
Yeah.
best of both worlds, the combination. So we
Mm.
started earlier talking about identity. So with all of the work that you've done, not just from business but personal, across so many different communities, what's your identity? How would you articulate your identity today?
That's a tough question. You might be
Give it,
uncomfortably growing me on this call.
give it a
Um,
whirl.
yeah. Is that a specific? Do you mean cultural identity? Is that
No, well, I think that's obviously a part of it. Yeah, but if someone asked you, what are you about? What's your identity? Would you answer, what would you answer?
okay? Yeah. It's such a tough question.
It
Like,
is.
'cause there's different layers here.
Uh-huh.
Um, I mean, I think I'm, yeah, okay. I think I'm passionate about the, like, in terms of my identity would be around, um, I think like, so different, different. cultures have a perspective on the world which is unique. So it's quite heterogeneous, different. And if we can, but a lot of them at the edges are dying out at a rapid rate. So if we can
Mm.
protect the idea, these different ideas,
Mm.
then we're more enriched internally. So that's kind of that's what I'm about externally. If I say what does that mean internally? I think it's the
Mm.
same. I think because I've gone through my own kind of the
Mm.
spiritual belief system journey, and there is so much wisdom in
Mm.
cultures that are on the margins and the edges.
Mm.
And I've learned so much. The Pindabi one community that I learned a lot from,
Mhm.
but around the world,
Cat? Uh-huh.
bringing a message. Yeah, so I've learned so much from so many different cultures about um, how to view oneself and how to be a better person in general. And the example is like I've met shamans in different countries and healers and the fake ones and the real ones and
Mm.
all been on quite a journey with all of that. And um there's amazing knowledge in
Mm.
those systems that science is just starting to catch up on.
Mm.
I learned from a teacher in Thailand who learned from this monk in the Wudang Mountains about how to remove negative emotions from the body because they're stored in our stomach, they say, and in
Wow.
our organs. Um, and now, like, science is
Mm.
talking more about the brain and gut connection.
Yeah.
It's talking more about vagus nerve and
Yep.
how to release
Mhm.
the parasympathetic nervous
Yeah.
system and how to be a lot more relaxed and also the epigenetics around like ancestral patterns and things like that.
Yeah.
That knowledge is already embedded in some of these
Yeah.
cultures.
Yeah. It's just like
Um,
Western science is only catching up to what was known in a lot of ancient cultures.
yeah, but I think both of them are amazing because you want
Yeah.
the science because there's a lot of
Mhm.
sometimes stuff that doesn't help the masses. And maybe
Yeah.
you ask me what am I about? I mean, it is about science and the maybe consciousness
Yeah.
and the worlds in between that. I like to explore those worlds a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to become more relevant when AI starts to take over because ultimately that's a big question around can AI ever become human and is consciousness the difference between us and a robot.
Yeah. Wow. I'm gonna have to think about this episode for quite a while, Reg. As always when we chat. But it also reminds me of something else because I always talk about in my work around uncomfortable growth, how you have to know yourself to grow yourself.
Mm.
But knowing yourself isn't just exploring what's already there.
Mm.
Knowing yourself is also about exploring other worldviews or looking for things that challenge your beliefs, so they're not by default because we all have the opportunity to grow and not just stay with what has been
Mm.
our past beliefs. And I think that's what um exploring different cultures, but even travel, because when you're traveling, you're exploring different physical worldviews as well as cultural worldviews,
Well,
right? And
the way I see that is almost it's like a control group because you've got yourself here
yeah.
in this
Yes,
environment,
yeah.
and then you go away. Let's say you live in the UK for a year or live
Uh-huh.
somewhere in Japan for a year, and then you're you in that environment,
Yeah.
and then you start to see differences, commonalities, whatever, what you like, and then you come back to Australia, let's say,
Hmm.
after a year, after 5 years, let's say,
Mm.
and suddenly you're faced with your current self in Australia versus who you were in Japan versus who you
Mm-hmm.
were in Australia 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it's those perspectives just to, for me, provide a control group in a way to then
Mm.
see what is who are you, and then what
Yes.
and how are you in different environments, what's
Yeah.
relative, what's a bit less relative, what's
Yes.
objective, what's so different cultures for me is the same thing. It's like it's almost being just traversing in different worlds actually
Yes.
allows you to, if you want to,
Yes.
open to understanding it, to just yeah, see,
See
dig
what
deeper and
fits.
yeah.
Yeah, but I agree because you can also choose to take it with you. And you said that right at the start. It's like if you choose, it's if you want to, if you choose to do something with it. And I think
I
that
actually stole
is,
that from Mel Hopkins.
oh, did you?
Your episode with Mel Hopkins when she said, she said it a different way. She said, "I'll leave the lid off. That you can leave the lid on or you leave it off."
Love it, love it. Um, but yeah, like you get to experience and understand and then decide if that's something that you want to take with you and keep in you. And then that creates this amazing fusion in you
Yeah,
that can grow further in different ways.
yeah,
And I think Australians obviously love travel, right? You talk to most Australians and travel is
yeah,
usually high up on the list, whether it's domestically or internationally.
yeah,
But I think there is that openness to say, well, let's explore, let's
yeah.
see, let's enjoy. And let's bring in the parts that make sense to me as an individual, but make sense also to us as a society. And it is one of the things I love about Australia.
Yeah. It's and that's probably like a trigger. The travel or the different cultures is you can't choose. Like if you're in Japan, it's just a different environment, and
Yeah,
you're faced with a different perspective. Whereas
yeah,
if you stay here, um, then you have to do some work
yeah,
to
yeah,
then get that
yeah,
perspective. So I love
exactly.
that about travel, and
Yeah.
even yeah, traveling to another suburb in Sydney is so cool.
Yes.
Um,
That can be like exactly. You don't have to go overseas. It can be also domestically because of the enrichness of the different communities, just even in Sydney, in Australia, in lots of different in different cities across
yeah,
Australia.
I'd love to see that more,
Yeah,
almost like what you said about the girls' experience in Singapore, but like,
yeah,
how we create little like experiences all over the
yes,
city or in our cities to
yeah,
have these opportunities where everyone gets to experience them, and they're not just this, hey, we're going to fund the Moon Festival, which is over there, and nobody gets to
yeah,
go to it or experience it or feels uncomfortable to go. I
yeah.
think, the Lakemba, the Eid
Uh-huh.
celebration's an example of that being done well, like where it's
Yes.
people are like, oh, okay, we're really interested in seeing that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Cool.
exactly. So I've got a few questions to finish us off. As usual, there's multiple parts to it though. So the first thing is what have you learned about yourself in recent years?
Oh, heaps of stuff.
Hmm.
Probably more and more that your kind of own limitation is you, meaning I know that's a common phrase, but just in terms of what you think you are, who you are, and often we can experience something, let's say when we're a kid, and then just have a view of ourselves and then carry it on into adulthood, and then that's just your reality, and that's the experience you're attracting. So I've become a lot more aware of
Mm.
that, and being very proactive in resetting those assumptions, and
Mm.
by any means necessary, like in terms of I'm quite militaristic when it comes to my own. view personal growth and, like kind of,
Yes. How you design that.
yeah, like I'll want to put myself in uncomfortable positions to reset that or test certain.
Mm.
And
Mm.
that's been so amazing and so rewarding. Like it's phenomenal what we store when we're a kid about
Yes.
ourselves, and then I start to see that in others, and they
Yeah.
talking to me, and it's often like because you don't see that in them, and yet they see themselves a particular way.
Yeah.
If we can, just nudge those around us
Yes.
of things and even just explore and help them dig a little bit more because you don't know what people are thinking about themselves. And
Yes.
it can often be quite incredulously ridiculous.
Yeah. I know.
Like
You
it
kind of
sounds,
you kind of look and you're like, really? I would not have
yeah,
thought
exactly.
that about you just from my experience of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big one. I think another big one, sorry, I don't want to give you all these
This is good.
metaphysical ones, but another one was actually like become more aware of this, but everything that reflects externally is some reflection of yourself internally. And
Hmm.
that's quite potentially controversial because if somebody says you're walking down the street and somebody yells at you randomly, is that me? But I've actually often in my journey actually found that it is somewhere deep inside there is some
Hmm.
connection to yourself
Hmm.
and the projection into the world. And so I've kind of enjoyed exploring that a little bit.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. It's very deep. But it's also a good catalyst, right? So it's a good catalyst to explore if
yeah,
someone
exactly.
does
Good
that.
hypothesis to start with, and then
Yeah,
go
yeah,
from there.
and just see.
Because
Hmm.
yeah, a lot of my friends that I share on philosophical circles or whatever, they'll beat me
Yeah.
up about that. But
Still valuing that.
um, I think definitely like, can I have four?
You can have four. You can have four.
Another one
Just for
just
you,
popped in
Reg, you
my
get four.
I think the third one is probably like there are. And this is one of those ones where science is starting to talk about it, but the ancestral patterns and these
Mm.
algorithms that run in us, even in like
Mm.
not just childhood, but like these things get passed on. There's evidence now
Mm.
that DNA carries information, and I think that's so fascinating because often explains certain things that get
Mm.
passed on and that you just don't understand. Why is that
Mhm.
happening to me right
Yeah,
now?
why is that there?
Yeah. And I think if we can just kind of almost like zoom out a little bit, Google Maps, and just look at a longer timeline,
Hmm.
things start to make a bit more sense because people now, it's like there's a lot of mental health or, challenges that we have basically in respect to how we view ourselves. But
Mm.
if it's too myopic, then we're not able to really get a good understanding. And I think everyone has the answer for themselves in a way. They know
Mm.
themselves and they have that answer. But do we have the mechanisms to understand that? And do we
Mm.
have the tools to then deal with that? Is
Yeah.
something really interesting. But so that's three. And number four, I'll keep it simple, which is just be like gratitude and gratefulness, I think, has been a
Mm.
really big piece and celebrating your wins and being those around celebrating people around you and the wins. It's those human connections that really make us human and bring joy and happiness to
Yeah,
our
so
life.
important, isn't it? It's so important to just appreciate what is already there and yeah, and to celebrate that and to just have gratitude with those around you.
Yeah.
Um, it's such a it's such a simple thing, but we often forget to do it because we're always thinking what's next.
Yeah.
And that's your point of how do you become present and just be, in the present and grateful for the gifts that are here.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Reg. This has been an incredible episode. And I know we'll get to continue our philosophical, spiritual chats ongoing.
Looking forward to it. But yeah, thank you so much for organizing this. I was thinking about it. You're bringing that human relatable element to the industry and also
Mm.
wider as well. And I think that takes a lot of um innovation, guts, and just to go there. I think it's cool. It's awesome.
Oh, thank you. Really, I just like chatting.
And capturing people's responses so it can
That's
be
right.
sent
That's
later.
right. Making you do all the hard work. Well, thank you, Reg, and you have a great day.
Awesome. Thanks, Rowena.
If you are inspired but thinking, I can't do that, then you are so wrong. Anyone can learn the art of uncomfortable growth with the help of my flagship program, Uncomfortable Growth, Own Your Reinvention. In this, you will learn to navigate your own internal contradictions to finally unlock the courage and commitment to live a deeply meaningful life by design and on your terms. Uncomfortable growth is about the struggle and joy in discovering who you are, what you truly want, and how to make it happen. If this is something you are ready for, then find out more at www.rowenamillward.com. What have you got to lose, or more importantly, gain?